Okay, so we're in the studio now. I'm not showing you any more shop process videos because I've been just a madman in my shop trying to figure out how to come up with cymbals, tribute cymbals that are aimed at this cymbal here that I would be proud of putting out there, and cymbals that I would like. So I have made more than just 3. I have made 6. Actually, I'm in process of making a 7th. But I have enough in a completed state to show you the results of these tribute cymbals and this process of taking this wacky cymbal and making some cymbals inspired by it. After reading the comments on the first video, it was very clear to see that this is a divisive cymbal. About half of the people love it, about half of the people hate it. Some of the people really hate it. And I'm here for it. I'm loving the process of diving into this controversial sound. I personally don't gravitate towards this kind of sound. I personally don't gravitate towards old Ks in general. But that being said, I don't want to be so locked into my taste as a maker that I can't accomplish, other different sounds that might fall outside of what I prefer. So for me, I'm always going to look at a cymbal. There are some cymbals I'll just flat out say that's a garbage cymbal. Nothing about that is good. But most of the time, I'm going to take a cymbal and I'm going to analyze it from different perspectives and see where would this function well in. It's not my job to tell you exactly what a good sound is or a bad sound is. I can definitely offer insight into what makes a certain sound come across the way that it does. So that little caveat aside, when we deal with this crazy old K, we have, like I've said in the other videos, this controlled chaotic sound. It has areas of the cymbal that play nice, that you can really get the job done on the gig, but other areas that are a little wild. It's got really aggressive, kind of in-your-face crashes. It borders on being a little clunky to my ear, it doesn't have quite the smoothness that I like to hear from my cymbals, which you'll definitely hear that when I show you these tributes, because they don't have near the level of aggression that this old K has. And that's just a personal choice of mine to basically take the inspiration of the cymbal and what I feel like is amazing about the cymbal and translate it into one of my own. I have them all back here, and I've got them up here on the kit. Let's go through, and I'll play the Met cymbal so you can get your foundation of this is the reference, and then I'll just back to back show you all the cymbals that I made, and we'll talk about them. so as you heard, there's a lot of stuff there, a lot of different sounds happening, but to me, I kind of feel like I've captured the essence of this cymbal in a lot of these. You heard kind of the smallest up to the largest, so I have two that I made that are right on 19.5, which is the dimension of the original. Then I have two that are 20-inch cymbals. Then I have a 21 and a 22. So I took that 24-inch cymbal, I cut it down to a 21. That one might be my favorite. I'm not quite sure. Haven't really decided yet. You saw that on the two 19.5s and the two 20s, I went ahead and drilled, popped in the rivets, the same rivet specs as the original. I haven't done the rivets on the 21 and the 22 because I don't know that I want to just yet. So let's go through and talk about each one. The first one you saw was this guy here, 19.5, and the weight on it is 1,668 grams. It is a little bit lighter than the reference because the reference is 1,684. But I really, really dig this cymbal a lot. To me, I feel like with the rivets, it's super, super nice because that's kind of taming down some of those gong-like weird tones. This one I feel like gets the closest to my ear to the reference cymbal because I hear that kind of growl that it has and that kind of gong-like tone that's coming from that flatter portion up near the center, but it's not overbearing. And also, even though I have kind of the articulation that I want from the edge, it feels like it has a nicer crash, and there's like a softer thing to the crash. It's not quite like abrasive and sort of annoying to my ear on the edge. And then the bell on all of these is actually a lot more articulate. So I'm hearing, I'm not a big fan of bells like the one on the original that are sort of hollow sounding. To me, that kind of, I don't know, there's something about the hollow sound kind of, it activates too much of the rest of the cymbal, and I'm wanting to create a little bit more of a functional cymbal that has a bit more range to it. So, all right, next up we have what I would consider kind of the ugly one of the batch, the one that I'm not a super big fan of, and that's the second 19.5. This one weighs 1,608 grams, so I went a good bit thinner than the reference. And I had to chase some weird stuff in the shape, weird stuff in how it was kind of responding to my hammering, so it got a little bit too tall. It's still generally the same kind of shape with the big hook at the edge, but it just is a little bit too tall near the center. So we're getting into a little bit more of that one-dimensional umbrella shape kind of thing, and I don't really love it. I don't think that the stick definition is bad. I think that the bell is actually really, really nice. What I'm feeling it lacks is this life and airiness in the sustain. I feel like it's a little bit too just a nice stick definition and kind of that umbrella-shaped crash that is typically on those kinds of cymbals. And then it lacks kind of a high fidelity thing where you're hearing the high sibilance and the shimmer, and then you're hearing the nice mids and the lows, and everything feels stretched apart. I feel like it kind of missed the mark in a way. With rivets, it's nice, and I think this would work really, really well in a louder room where you need a super controlled cymbal and you're playing really low volume. 1,608 grams is really thin for a 19.5 cymbal. I left enough weight on the bell so that the thinness is really coming near the edge. It's really got a nice taper to it. But for me, it's not the one I would say really hit the mark the best. So that's the 19.5s. Now let's talk about probably my favorites, I'll be honest, the 20s. The one over here on the left, first 20-inch one you heard, is 1,757 grams. So again, a little bit thinner. But with these cymbals especially, I feel like I kind of married, my sound, the sound I like to make, and this sound kind of, they had a baby, and so you have, these cymbals are less clangy and kind of gong-like and sort of wild, and they feel more, to me, like this kind of sound I want to hear from a cymbal. That's even a cymbal that's a little bit funky. And so it kind of, I feel like these cymbals sort of, in the best way of all of them, dialed down the funkiness and brought up the smoothness and kind of this inviting sense of really wanting to like dig into the cymbal, and without any kind of like weird clangy stuff going on. So this first one, yeah, still has the rivets in it, but with all of these cymbals, you have that sense of like there's tones happening near the bell, and you know it opens up a little bit. But when you come out halfway to the cymbal, out to the edge, it's just beautiful. You have, to me, you have those hums and softness up near the bell are feeding the sound in a really beautiful way. You have this clear stick, this nice sibilance up top, but there's also depth, and there's mid-range, and there's hums and growls and stuff that's just making the sound really, really nice. This might be my favorite, actually. The bell on this one I really, really love. So that's the 20, first 20. The second 20 is maybe the closest in weight that I got. Relative, obviously 19 and a half, 20 inch. So we're dealing with a half-inch difference. But this one is 1,775 grams. You know, this is not a foolproof method, but with a half-inch, it's usually around 100 grams or a little less. So if we were to take that down 100 grams, we'd be pretty much right on the 1,684 gram reference weight. Again, I really love this one. It has a little bit more aggression than this one here. This one has a little bit more smoothness. This one has a little bit more grit and growl. So this one feels, you know, more akin to the reference in that way. But there's still a sense of smoothness, sibilance, all that kind of stuff that I really like to hear in a cymbal. So these two, I'm really, really happy with how those ones turned out. And lastly, we have the 21 and the 22. I wanted to try and make a version of these that was larger, and that proved to be kind of difficult. I really was not a fan of the 24-inch, and, you know, I didn't even want to show it to you guys. It was just kind of a bland, ugly, boring sounding cymbal to me. And that's just because with a 24-inch cymbal, because the bigger diameter has a lower pitch, I'm usually looking to raise the profile up higher to bring in a higher pitch stick definition, because we have this really low fundamental because of the diameter. And so I was dealing with a really low shape and a big diameter, and it just felt like a mess. The cymbal just felt like a mess. So I cut that 24 down into this 21, rehammered it, because obviously you cut the edge down, that's also a flat cymbal again, so it had to be hammered again. So in that way, I think I was able to obtain more compression in the cymbal, which is giving me more of kind of an old school vibe. Like I said I've said in other videos just about how the amount of hammering that you do, the amount of compression that you're doing to the bronze to get a certain shape, the more you do, the more you're kind of like tightening everything, and the more articulate things are going to be, the more compressed things are going to be, the more hard and stiff, which lends itself towards, in a way, replicating what an old cymbal that's had time to develop and get brittle and hard in that way. It can kind of help replicate that. So the more hammering you do typically leads to this taller shape, but this is kind of a little weird insight I've discovered by failing, you know, in the past. It's like if I hammer a cymbal super tall, say it's a really big cymbal like a 24, I hammer it really tall, and then I cut it down, it's all of a sudden a flat cymbal, but all of that surface area up above has been compressed with all of that hammering. And so you have to go in again and hammer again to get the shape. And so it has almost like double the amount of hammering for a cymbal. If I had just grabbed a 21 and hammered it, this 21 has about double the hammering just to have the shape that it has. So with that, we have maybe one of my favorites, or maybe my favorite. I don't know. I can't decide. I feel like this one really gets kind of close to this Tim Metz Old K reference. I feel like the amount of dryness that it has, it feels to me like a vintage cymbal. It really, really feels like an old cymbal. And that's exactly, the reason for that is exactly what I just shared about the amount of hammering that it has. It maybe lacks, for my personal taste, it maybe lacks a little bit of smoothness near the edge. But honestly, you know, what'll happen is that cymbal, it'll open up a little bit more as it has time to fully rest, and there'll be a little bit more shimmer and sibilance and sustain over the coming weeks because it was just finished in a few days ago. But that amount of control there and that amount of like stick articulation is oftentimes what jazz drummers love and what a lot of drummers love for various purposes. It's like if you really need your patterns that you're playing with the ride to be heard, then you need something that has a really articulate, tight stick definition. And that one really, really does to my ear. It's like that, you know, I can start with a low dynamic and build it up, and you're never going to hear the sustain overtake the stick. It has a very clear ceiling to when it will build up, and it just has a ceiling that it'll hit, and it will not get louder. The louder I get, that sustain is not getting any louder. It's just that definition that's getting bigger and bigger sounding. So I also feel like I got closer on the bell shape with this one. Shape-wise, it's giving me kind of the same amount of activation and integration with the rest of the cymbal in a nice way. So the 21, I dig it. 22-inch. This one's, you know, interesting. I like it. You know. I feel like I hear a little bit more of that flatness up near the bell than I would necessarily want to. Ooh, that note is like, oh, hello. But you don't hear that note when you're out here. Or at least it doesn't build up and get in the mix. So as far as like taking, you know, making a 22-inch version of the original, I think it works. Personally, I would want to iron out that hum and that drone that it has up near the bell, which I probably will iron it out, to be honest. It really is something that, from my experience, has become kind of like the big no-no, is you don't have flat dipping portions near the bell and all that openness near the bell and hums and honks. You just don't do that because it makes for a cymbal that's unusable, blah, 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 blah. That's totally fine. But this is literally a phenomenal drummer's favorite cymbal, and he uses it on a ton of gigs. And so that says something to me. It's like, okay, well, this guy's playing with other musicians. He's playing with bassists. Those bassists are giving him feedback on his cymbals. And, you know, he's not going to take a cymbal that sounds like garbage to the rest of the band. He's gonna craft his sound in a way that it's pleasing in the midst of making music, which really is the point. So I like to take away whatever I can from every cymbal that comes into my shop. And anytime I'm trying a weird experiment like this experiment of making some cymbals that are really zoned in on a certain weird, funky sound, I'm always trying to learn something new, because I will take, and I already have actually just in the weeks since I started this project, I am taking things away from this cymbal, and there are going to be things that I use in my future concepts. I'll be able to, you know, design in a cymbal that has a similar flange like this, but it has more of a trajectory up to the bell that raises a little bit, and so I'll be able to get a little bit more of that like funky, growly, aggressive crash, contained crash that this cymbal has in a cymbal that also doesn't have any hums up near the bell, also has a really clear bell, or whatever it is. Also with the lathing, these circular lathing grooves that aren't spirals, there's a lot of amazing stuff in there that I've taken from just checking out this cymbal. So all in all, old Ks are great. I have a video on old Ks that was very controversial to some people, where I just talk about my thoughts on vintage cymbals. And, you know, I don't really love them as much as some people do. I certainly don't think they're worth thousands of dollars for me, but they are for plenty of other drummers. But I really want to know what you guys think about this project. It's been weeks and many hours, failures, and, you know, tons of work on my end. And hopefully you guys dig what I've put out. And these cymbals are gonna be live on my website soon, and I'll be making more like this. And I'm gonna be tweaking designs and kind of zoning this into something, you know, a little bit more akin to, you know, my take on the vintage cymbal sort of thing. And it'll fall under my tributary series. So you can always check out my website, reveriedrums.com. I have a commission form there. And this original project, the reason I had told Tim about the project, it was because someone had commissioned me to make a cymbal like this one. And I told Tim about it, and he was gracious enough to send me the cymbal so that I could actually do it in person. So I'm sure I'll be making more, but I also have series, and they all kind of have a different sonic palette. So you can go to the website, you can see the batches that I drop about once a month, and you can also commission me to make you a cymbal. So that's it. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all this. Hit the subscribe and the bell if you want notifications, and keep an eye out for the next video. I'm Timothy Roberts. Thanks for watching.